Welcome, dear friends, to a tale of lost love redemption and the extraordinary power of second chances that can heal even the deepest wounds of the past. Enjoy the story.
The crisp autumn air wrapped itself around James Holloway's weathered face as he sat on the park bench, gazing intently at a worn photograph he held in his trembling hands. At 65, James was a man burdened by the weight of his past. His once sharp, steel-gray eyes were now clouded with the regrets of missed opportunities and wrong choices. The woman in the picture, Rachel, was the one he had let slip away. Her radiant smile, once so full of love and trust, stared back at him, a haunting reminder of the life he could have lived. "Rachel," he whispered, his voice barely audible, "what I wouldn't give to turn back time." As the golden leaves of autumn swirled around him, James closed his eyes and allowed himself to be carried back to a time when life seemed simple, full of promise. A time when second chances didn't feel like a necessity, and love seemed infinite. He was startled by the sound of an elderly couple walking by, their hands intertwined, their soft laughter carried on the breeze. James watched them, a lump forming in his throat. "That could have been us," he thought, "if only I hadn't been so foolish." He looked down at the photo again, the memories flooding back. It was taken on Rachel's 25th birthday, a picnic in this very park. She had been full of life that day, her eyes sparkling with joy and trust. Trust he had shattered. His voice cracked as he murmured, "I'm so sorry," a single tear tracing a line down his cheek. He had been holding on to that guilt for over 30 years, a guilt that no amount of success could erase. 30 years earlier, James had been a man on the rise. At 35, he was well on his way to becoming a financial powerhouse. But on that particular evening, success was the last thing on his mind. He stood in front of his bathroom mirror, adjusting his tie nervously, rehearsing the most important question he would ever ask. "Rachel, will you marry me?" The small velvet box in his pocket held the key to the future he had envisioned for them, a future full of love, commitment, and the promise of forever. But fate, as it often does, had other plans. A sharp knock at the door pulled him from his thoughts. He opened it to find Olivia Kane, his neighbor, standing there, her fiery red hair wild and untamed, her green eyes full of mischief and adventure. "Hey, neighbor," she said, her voice smooth as silk. "I'm locked out. Mind if I use your phone?" James hesitated but nodded, letting her in. Olivia was a force of nature, bold, confident, and completely unlike Rachel. As she made herself comfortable in his apartment, James felt his resolve falter. Olivia's presence was intoxicating, her words like a siren's song. "You're too young to settle down, James. There's so much more to life. Don't you want to see the world? Live a little?" Her words planted doubt where none had existed before. That evening, instead of proposing to Rachel, James found himself caught in a whirlwind that would lead him far from the life he had planned. What followed was a whirlwind romance with Olivia that took James across the world. From impromptu trips to Paris to late-night escapades in New York, their lives were a blur of excitement and passion. But while Olivia was daring and spontaneous, James began to realize that excitement alone could not sustain a relationship. Rachel, with her quiet strength and steady love, became a distant memory, a casualty of James's quest for adventure. 5 years later, that whirlwind came crashing down. Olivia, always seeking something more, grew restless. Their once exciting life began to feel suffocating to her. During one of their many arguments, Olivia screamed, "Is this all there is? I thought we were supposed to be free, but we're trapped." James, exasperated, threw his hands up. "What more do you want, Olivia? We have everything." "Everything except freedom," she snapped back. "You've become predictable, James. You're not the man I fell in love with." James stared at her, realizing the truth in her words. He had changed. The man who had once craved adventure had grown tired of the constant chaos. "Maybe it's time you grew up, Olivia," he said, the words bitter on his tongue. next morning, Olivia was gone, leaving behind a note that simply read, "Found a new adventure. Don't wait up." James was left standing in their empty apartment, surrounded by the remnants of a life that had burned bright but faded too fast. He had given up everything for Olivia, and now he had nothing. As the years passed, James built a life for himself, becoming a titan of industry. His name became synonymous with success, but behind the facade of power and wealth lurked a man haunted by the choices of his past. As his 60th birthday approached, he found himself drawn back to his hometown. Something deep inside called him back to the place where his life had taken that fateful turn. Sarah knelt down, looking her daughter in the eye. "Maria, listen to me. I will never, ever forget about you. You're my world. I'm going to do everything in my power to bring you home. I promise." That evening, after the children had gone to bed, Sarah, Kate, and Jack sat around the kitchen table strategizing. "The most important thing right now is to find a job," Sarah mused, running her finger around the rim of her coffee mug. "And it needs to be official and respectable." Jack scratched his forehead thoughtfully. "You know, I saw a notice at our bank. They're looking for a janitor. It's not glamorous, but it's a job." Sarah shook her head doubtfully. "It's a bank, though, with my record." "Don't worry," Jack reassured her. "The owner's a decent guy. I don't think he'll object. And let's face it, Sarah, you can't be picky right now." Sarah nodded, knowing he was right. "Okay, I'll give it a shot. Thanks, Jack."